Hello and welcome. Today we've got Michael Jaco, former CIA and Navy SEAL. And today we are going to be discussing the southern border convoy that's coming up, the German farmers who dominate their own government now, and also the electric car market is going down and nobody wants electric cars and the big companies are very worried. They're losing lots of money. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to my Instagram channel at nicholas.veniamin, where you can follow all my daily news reels. Michael, thank you so much for joining me. How are you and what have you been up to?
Doing great, Nicholas. Getting ready for, events that seem to be coming down the line. I've been talking with a lot of people lately about how, we've been saying for a couple months now that people really need to get active and get moving, and because it's up to the people of the world to really take down this deep state government, which is pretty much taken over. So one of the things that's going to happen here pretty soon is the end of January and the first part of February, February 3rd to be in fact, there's a southern border convoy that's going to push off here in the United States. So it's a peaceful protest, peaceful assembly, peaceful protest against the government allowing our border to be infiltrated by massive numbers of illegal aliens. So we're going to go down there and make this a big event. We have basically we've called on like myself, retired military and law enforcement, mama bears, as we call them, elected officials, business owners, ranchers, truckers, bikers, media, and law-abiding, freedom-loving Americans. So all of us, pretty much everyone in America, is not liking, what's going on at our border, and the pretty much the government, the deep state, that has taken over our country, because we all know at this point that President Trump is our rightful president, but it was stolen by the deep state. So we are occupied right now. And I think a lot of countries around the world are occupied. You look at Germany. So Germany has they're basically their ranchers and farmers and so forth have driven their tractors into Berlin and basically have shut Berlin down for several days now, maybe up to a week. And now they're occupying all around Parliament. And they're saying that the government has to go. All right. So that's substantial. And that's what we want to start seeing everywhere.
Absolutely. Now, before we get into all of that, which day is the convoy going to happen at the southern border?
Well, the convoy begins at January 29th in Virginia Beach, Virginia. That's where I was as a Navy SEAL, so I love that place. And then it travels down, meets up at several different places. There's a website, takeourborderback.com, and you can find all this information there. So it's basically going to Eagle Pass, Texas, Yuma, Arizona, and San Ysidro, California. So all three of those on the same date, February 3rd. So we have, so I've been talking about this for a long time, for years actually, that Texas is allowing this border invasion. Arizona is allowing this border invasion. New Mexico is allowing it, and same thing with California. So all these different states are allowing this invasion, and the governors and law enforcement and so forth in those states, along with the federal government, to allow this invasion to continue to happen. And they're making tons of money, busing people all over our country. So it is definitely an operation that they're doing to basically take down our country, to destroy our country, and we have to fight back. We have to stand up and peacefully assemble and start to say no more.
Absolutely. No, it's very important that we do peaceful protest. I suspect that there's going to be lots of Trump flags at the same time. And probably some people who are annoyed with Trump that things are taking too slow. So there's that side of it too. Now, because we have such a corrupt government, who is it in the government that says, well, all these people are protesting peacefully and there's so many of them, we actually have to do something and listen to them? Who is it in the government that does that and makes change when there's a mass peaceful protest?
Well, that's definitely a deep state activity that pushes back on it, because it's a constitutional right of all Americans to protest. And it even goes back to the Bill of Rights of England, because our laws here in the United States are pretty much based off of English law from 1689. So the same thing, the right to bear arms, that goes all the way back to English Bill of Rights. So on and on and on. So the right to assemble and protest peacefully, all these are from English law. So we have an affinity with, our culture that stems from Europe. And of course, Europe, unfortunately, like America, has been taken over by the deep state. And we're led to believe that that's not our right anymore to do that. So anyone that pushes back on our right to do that is part of the deep state, and that needs to be pointed out. And who is pushing back? So then follow the trail back to who's pushing back. I mean, we have here in the United States today in Iowa, we're having the GOP, the Republican caucus, for who they're going to pick for the top presidential candidate. President Trump, by all accounts, is probably going to win hands down in that Iowa caucus. Now, the governor of Iowa just recently came out in support of Ron DeSantis. Now, Ron DeSantis and the governor, I can't remember her name, but both of them have they came into power because of President Trump. They're governors because of President Trump, and both of them are going against President Trump now. So it's basically they're exposing themselves as part of the deep state. So that is one of the things that we have noticed since Trump basically stepped back and allowed this deep state process to continue instead of pushing back on it, which he had every right and every, all the options to do that. So we're basically in a occupation right now here in the United States, and we're exposing all that. And at some point, I think, as the American people start to stand up and push back on this, then elements within our military, because the military is compromised as well. When I say compromise, it's been infiltrated, just like our government's been infiltrated, just like our institutions, the FBI, the CIA, and so forth, have all been infiltrated by deep state activity. So, exposing that has been part of what has awakened America. So I think that regardless of your political affiliation at this point, Democrat, Republican, Independent, it doesn't matter at this point. All American people are pretty much tired of this situation that we're in right now. And all of America is starting to realize that we're under occupation by a deep state activity.
Absolutely. There are two people that obviously came into power because of Trump. Do you think that they're worried that Trump's not going to win, and because they were seen supporting Trump, they will be outcasted by the deep state?
No, I think that the deep state basically has pulled their puppet strings and basically told them that they have to. And, like we saw with Jeffrey Epstein, there's a lot of people that have, dirt on them. And that's part of the activity that the deep state does. They're constantly looking for ways they can find something that someone likes, so that if they were to be compromised with this material, it would destroy them. So I think that, some of it's been set up. We look at, President Trump right now being attacked by the law and lawfare. Basically, there's warfare and there's lawfare. So the lawfare is basically coming after President Trump, and he's destroying it. He's destroying that narrative as well. So they've created narratives that don't exist in reality. One of those is that he pushed the January 6th uprising, that he was part of that. And for that, he can't be on the ballot in Colorado or Maine. That's ridiculous, because it's never been proven in court and has never even been charged with an uprising. So this is all fantasy that they've created. Now, what I've been seeing across the board is that some of these fantasies that they come out with are fantasies that they already had written, and the other supporting information that would have made these fantasies more like reality haven't existed, haven't come to fruition. So they've been pushing these narratives for quite some time. If you look at, the Ukraine war as well, you have Zelensky talking about how they're going to occupy Crimea. They're not anywhere close to Crimea. In fact, the Russians are pushing them back on the entire front that they had pushed back on. And there's this whisper that they're going to come in and take over all of the occupied, what they call occupied territory of Ukraine by Russia. That has not happened. So even though that's not happened, they still have narratives that were written that were supposed to come out in a certain time frame. So I'm seeing a lot of that right now. So we look at Zelensky saying we're going to occupy Crimea, and it's when what reality does that exist? None. There's no reality where that exists. It's the same thing with these people that are pushing this narrative that Trump is part of some kind of insurrection. They created the insurrection, and now they're saying that he is he's the one that created the insurrection. So all of this narrative is falling apart. We're starting to see that they did this. The FBI and all these different organizations came out and pushed this event while we were peacefully protesting in a stolen election. And so this is part of how they destroyed our peaceful, good narrative and came in with a negative narrative. And now they're pushing it to in a lawfare type situation where they're going to try and take out Trump, which is not working out.
We're seeing people like Chris Christie, drop out. We're seeing Vivek Ramaswamy try to manipulate a Trump supporter to vote for him. What do you think about this?
Yeah, it's the same thing. Anyone that is not completely and totally supporting Trump at this point, because everyone knows that he is the president right now. He was voted in, and that this election was stolen. Anyone that says anything different from that right now is basically playing a deep state game and trying to play like, oh, I'm for all this, but and so if Trump doesn't make it, so Ramaswamy has been saying that they're not going to allow Trump to make it. Why? Because something. Is that part? So this is part of the narrative that I'm talking about. These people are like given narratives which don't exist in any kind of reality, and they start to push them because at this point, these commentaries or these narratives would have gotten traction, but people like you and I are destroying them as they come out of their mouths. And if we destroy the narratives before it gets going, I saw you do this on YouTube as well, or not YouTube, but on Twitter as well. You destroyed his narrative very quickly. So once we destroy their narrative and it doesn't gain any traction, it's gone. And they can't, manipulate. Now, we've seen narratives like the COVID-19 narrative, which got traction and basically really, caused a lot of problems throughout the world. Now we're seeing pretty much everyone is seeing that was a false narrative. Now we're in the George Floyd. On the day that George Floyd was supposedly killed, I was calling that a false narrative right then. There were people that I knew that lived there that were telling me that I was full of it. And so this is how these narratives get going. There was I have this guy, Kevin Hoyt, that ran for governor of Vermont. He and I were on a show yesterday, where we were talking about how narratives, once they get going, they basically can blow up and they serve the deep state. Now, the George Floyd, like I was talking about, and he said, on that day, I took video of that and I showed video of that to Mike because he was into shows and, he had a TV series. So he showed that to his crew and he says, just look at that and tell me what you think. He said, all of them.
Are you worried about the effects that higher inflation rates will have on your investments? Are you trying to secure your retirement savings against losses, but you notice that inflation is a hot topic these days? But how dangerous are low inflation rates on your retirement savings? An inflation rate of 2% may not seem like much, but it means that prices will just about quintuple over the lifetime of the average American. And 4% average inflation rate means that something that costs $1 when they're born will cost $23 when they die. That demonstrates the danger of even low inflation rates. So when it comes to gold and inflation rates, many investors want to know whether inflation rates have an effect on gold prices. What history indicates is that over the long term, increased inflation should lead to correspondingly higher gold prices. From September 1971 to August 2020, gold grew 7.5 times as much as inflation. Not only can an investment in physical gold help protect your assets against the damage done by inflation, it can also help grow the value of your retirement portfolio over the long term. If you're looking to protect your retirement assets, why wait until stock markets crash and gold begins to rise in price?
Happened on day one, really. We could have taken this group down. It may have been a little difficult, but then the information, once it gets revealed, basically wakes people up, and then they're like, "Oh, I see." That has been restricted, I think, for a great amount of people. Those of us that do the research and try and share this information, it gets pressed down. I mean, we don't have YouTube channels anymore because YouTube, reached too many people. So they shut us down so that we couldn't reach as many people. That is what's going on. There's not enough sharing of information. So we've relied on white hats, which have constantly for several years now said, don't worry, we're coming in, we're going to take over. The days, the weeks, the months, and the years now have gone by and nothing has happened. What is it going to take? It's going to take we, the people, to stand up and start to move like the people of Germany. And I love that the people of Germany are doing this because we look back in time, we look at how the people of Germany were taken over by the Nazis, and they used the same narrative techniques that we're seeing now, this Mockingbird media, to basically control and manipulate consciousness and what people thought and how people reacted. So now the German people are pushing back on what seems to be another very corrupt administration, very Nazi-esque, and they're not going to have it again because they learned the hard way last time. And so I think this is fantastic that they're pushing back on it. Now the Polish people are doing the same thing. The Polish people had someone, I believe, that was also inserted into power and wasn't elected. So they're also pushing back. So in Poland, for 35 years or however long it was, when the Polish people were the first one that stepped up against the Soviet Union and started the Soviet Union's collapse, I believe, now they are basically having the same thing that happened in the Soviet Union happen in Poland, and the Polish people are standing up and they're, peacefully protesting as well in massive numbers. So the people of the world have to get involved. It's not going to come from some source, some secret source, which is saying they're going to, and what are they like making secret deals behind the scenes too? They're not even any better than the Black Hats at this point, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. I mean, so we've got great things happening. We've got the Southern Border Convoy that's coming up, which is the people. We've got the German farmers. You mentioned Poland. I also want to mention something else about electric cars.
Yes.
A lot of people are waking up to how corrupt the electric cars are. They're rigid. They're not conventional. It makes no sense. They're close. If the government decides to close down the power, you can just sit in your gas car, turn it on, and charge your phone. You can't do that if they close the electric at home or in your Tesla car or whatever you want to call your electric car. But people, are waking up. They're not buying these Tesla cars, and Hertz, the big car giant, is now getting rid of electric cars because it's not profitable for them, and they now want to reinvest in gas cars. How do you think this is going to backlash to the deep state?
Yeah, it's starting. So it's another narrative that they started. This green energy deal was the way that we had to go. And we had to start shutting down, all these different plants, the coal-fired plants. We had to get rid of our gas stoves and ovens and so forth. So we've seen this stuff, and we have to go to electric cars. Now, in a lot of countries right now, because we're having record-setting deep freezes here in the United States, record-setting, that go back for 100+ years. So this is destroying their narrative. Right. So a lot of us have been saying this is a false narrative. It's false. Now people are seeing for themselves, just like with the COVID vaccination, people are dying, dropping dead everywhere. People are starting to see this false narrative. So as these narratives start to fall apart, it awakens people, and they're like, this is not right. We can't do this anymore. So in Sweden, for instance, which pushed massively for electric vehicles and buses and so forth, the buses can't run right now because they're having like the worst weather, I guess, in 70 years in Sweden, as far as cold. So the buses don't run. So I have a friend that had a Tesla, and he lives in Colorado, and he would go from Denver up into the mountains to ski, Breckenridge and so forth. And he said that, he would start out and the Tesla would say you have like 200+ miles, worth of energy or distance. And as he started up the mountains and in the cold, because he had to like run the heater and stuff like that, and he's going up hills that are very steep, it would start to gradually go down. He's going like 40-50 miles, and that 200 miles went to almost zero. So we had to pull over and charge up. So a lot of people are seeing that this is crazy. The electric vehicles, as they've been saying that they're going to be like the wave of the future, that's not happening. And people are waking up to that. And a lot of companies like Hertz are going back to gas vehicles, because that's the only way that really works right now.
Absolutely. I feel sorry for Lamborghini and big companies like that who are just now making electric vehicles and people don't want them. I don't understand why. And, people who, car lovers, I am, I don't understand why you would go and buy a supercar that's run on electric. You want to hear the engine. You want to, a V10, a V12. That's the whole point of it. So, what do you think those companies like Lamborghini, who are making electric vehicles now, do you think they will be doing the U-turn to go back to gas?
Yeah, absolutely. Because they were kind of like railroaded into doing that. If they wanted to continue their existence, then they had to start moving that direction. They had a lot of pressure from media and from governments and so forth. So they had to move in that direction. They're like, okay, Uncle, we'll build some electric vehicles. And now it's starting to turn. I'm sure they're going to be very happy to go back to build those V12s and so forth. So, UK, I love my Range Rover. I mean, I've been a Range Rover driver for more than a decade, well over a decade, close to 2 decades now. It is an extremely high performance vehicle. So why would I trade for a little Tesla over my Range Rover, which will go through storms, which will go through rain and ice and climb hills and go off country, all kind of crazy stuff? Why would I trade that for a Tesla? No. So it is a magnificent vehicle. And I think we're going to start to move back in that direction. And who knows, maybe we'll build, and I think they're out there, vehicles that will get even better performance, because that's what we've been getting over the last several decades. Higher performance and, longer ranges. I remember if you got like 300 miles to a gallon, that was good. I get like up to 600 miles sometimes in my Range Rover. So it is definitely the way of the future. But we can't take a step back and go in a different direction with this false narrative, like we talked about. False narratives need to be stopped. Now, electric vehicles, at some point, I'm glad they're doing the research, and at some point, maybe that's a thing, but maybe not. Maybe hydrogen vehicles are the way of the future. I don't know. But, competition ultimately is the greatest thing that's, evens the playing field. So merit-based companies that build the best engines, the best performing cars, get the greatest gas mileage and the greatest performance will be the ones that go forward. That's the way it should always be. I mean, I can imagine being in Navy SEAL teams and it's like, well, you gotta take this guy. He can't swim, he can't shoot, and he doesn't think really well, but you got to take him into your group. And we're like, no, that would never happen. But imagine that being forced into, a high performance group. That's what we're getting from government right now. So these governments have to fall. They have to go. They have to completely be taken offline and inserted with new, better thinking, better performing individuals. So
no, I absolutely agree. Yes, we might have hydrogen cars that work a lot faster, much faster, technology that we've never seen before. But I always think there's going to be some of us who like the history, who like the rawness. For an example, some people might like, electric cookers and electric heaters. Me personally, I like a nice old Victorian fireplace where you can light up real fire. For me, that's cozy. And I like the sound of an engine car, but it all depends. And that's like what you're saying, competition. And some of us fall into that. I like the history type of thing, but Michael, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing all your views. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to the viewers before we finish?
Yeah, so Nicholas, they can reach me at michaelkjaco.com. That's where all my stuff is. And, I always say, stay in the love vibration. The highest frequencies possible is a love vibration. And in that vibration, we can see through all of their negative, little machinations. So stay in that love vibration. It'll serve you.
Amen to that. Thank you very much, Michael. We'll speak again very soon. You take care. Bye-bye.
You too, Nicholas. Thanks.